Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. This is your host, Steve Ramona. And we've got a great guest today because we were just talking about in the green room how we all need mentors. We need somebody to talk to, somebody to bounce things off. And my guest does that, and he does that at a large level, which I really appreciate. And he does it with a servant's heart. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So your background's interesting. You're in prisons as a prison guard, which I have friends that did that. It's not an easy job. But let's start off, how does that help what you do today, what you learned at the prisons?
Yeah, I was a parole officer and I had studied the trade. I did a master's degree in criminology at University of Ottawa. I think what it did is it taught me to not necessarily, it taught me to look beyond the spoken word, to see where people are at, to see how their Doppler is hanging on any particular given day. Because people have moods and emotions, and they especially do in a penitentiary. And you got to gauge where people are at before you engage them, if you will. And that was a great learning lesson for me way back when.
Yeah. Was it a rewarding job?
Was it what? I'm sorry?
Rewarding doing that for many years? Did you?
I only did it, I did it for 3 years and had a career change. It's a noble profession, but it wasn't mine. And I was far too results oriented. And I don't say that necessarily as a great attribute, but I was far too results oriented, and you need more patience than I had. And so I simply made a personal career choices are at the end of the day a very personal and selfish thing to do, that you have to do. And I wanted in the corporate world, and I made plans to do that.
Yeah, prisons, and I'm probably rewarding is the wrong word, but yeah, I appreciate you saying that. My friends didn't have long lives there either. There's obviously the stress you can from the outside, a lot of burnout. Well, it's interesting. You're a strategic advisor, and you've got a unique name for your company. What's the name of the company, and how'd that come about?
The name of my company is Laurent Maxime Enterprises, and Laurent Maxime is a French name, and it's the name of my son, who's now 30. But when I named the company, he was probably 10 years old.
The heck of a legacy.
I had a corporate career that brought me across, 4 countries, but then I started my own consulting firm along the way as well. And it's just an opportunity to kind of use that accumulation of judgment and experience, and hopefully maybe even a little bit of wisdom, heaven forbid, that might have tapped in there along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. Strategy is important. How important are they for business?
Well, they're critical. If the world is changing, and it's changing, we live in a world that is rapid fire change, and so businessmen and women today have to be really adept at pivoting and making decisions on a change of direction. And sometimes you got to make that with instinct as well as your knowledge, because you don't have all the facts. You may be making a decision with 60% of the information.
Yeah.
So strategy is important. If you are if you're heading east looking for a sunset, you're going to have a long drive.
Yeah. And run out of gas or electric, depending on what you're driving, right?
Exactly.
Well, that leads to the COVID situation. We all know about it. Did that change a lot of people's strategies and bring stress to that?
Yeah, it has. The workplace as we knew it is no longer. So it's been transformative.
Yeah.
Even in large, even large companies like the big 4 accounting firms of Deloitte, KPMG, and the like, they for 70 or 80 years, partners would fight over who got the corner office with the 2 windows and the 3 potted plants. And then all of a sudden in COVID, those firms made a decision that, you know what? Partners don't necessarily need offices. We could share offices. And that was a drastic change. I mean, there were wars that were fought on who got the right office. And then we had people with the Great Resignation, people just saying, hell, I don't want to, where I live in Connecticut, a lot of people would take the train every morning, still do, of course, into Manhattan. Some people a couple of hours each way before they got to their designated office in the big city. And 2, 3, 4 hours a day on the train. And again, the COVID had people saying, is this all there is? I don't want to do that anymore. No, I'm not coming back. Or I'll come back 2 days a week or 3. And all of a sudden the pendulum swung from the employer to the employee calling the shot. So it's that massive, it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
We're still trying to work it all out. Some firms like JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon has said, get your backside in here. And there are other firms that have said, okay, got it. How about 3 and 2? Could you do that? Could you be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, Monday?
Yeah, and that the hybrid is, from what my friends tell me, and the change being a pendulum is really a good analogy, because COVID, they were at home. Before they were in the office, they love being at home, and they're asked to come back. They're like, I know friends that quit jobs today. I'm not going back 3 days a week.
Correct.
Which is good or bad. There's so many variables to that, but it's changing. Now, how is strategies with the employee, besides location and where the office is, how important is that?
Well, I think it gives them options. If it's important for an employee to have a hybrid work environment of, let's say, 3 and 2, 3 in and 2 out, then they have options to ponder. And if the present employer is too restrictive, then they have options to go, and it's a pretty good employment market. So, they have options to look at. And they, one time it was one size fits all. You went in for 8:30 and you left at 5, and you had a break in the morning, one in the afternoon, and a little bit of time for lunch. But now it's different today. So I think the employee has more options, and there's the whole concept of remote working as well, whereas you can be in Seattle working for a company in New Hampshire.
Right. How would you help a company handle the favoritism, or I got to work 5 days a week? You let this guy go the hybrid 3-2, but the 5 days a week had to be there. Either they answer the phones or whatever, but their job was there. How would you handle that? Because I see that as a little problem as well.
Yeah, well, I think there are certain jobs that are more tailored to the hybrid and the stay at home and the remote working, and there are some where you just need to be there. But I'm the company where I first retired from, Aquarion company in Connecticut. I know during COVID they were having call center people work from home. So, at one time I would have said, well, call center people got to be there. Not so. So, but there may be, obviously there are some functions that perhaps require on the on job locating.
That's an interesting comment, where solutions are coming about and new technology and new ideas to let's keep them happy. Like that's a great example. Call center. Right. Okay, I got to work at the office here because I got to pick up the call. Now technology or whatever they're doing is switch that role, that's transformational too. Wow.
Well, it is. And the employer who may want to monitor, productivity has access to that as well. They can monitor how many keystrokes you're making in a minute, and how much time you're spending on the computer and where you're spending it. So there's, you can't, there's not the argument anymore that, well, we can't monitor productivity. Well, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something else that's come about. So I love serving. We talked about it's doing business with servant's heart. How does serving come into a business's strategy?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it starts from the top.
Mm,
The concept, I believe Robert Greenleaf in 1970 wrote a paper where he talked about the leader as servant, and that effectively coined the term for the ages. And he talked about that it was more than just decision making, being good at making decisions, that it was about growing your people and paying attention to the communities you serve. So I believe it starts at the top, and you will, if you see a culture that where servant leadership is inculcated, it's usually because the CEO is a servant leader, and that individual will be not only good at decision making, but will have high emotional intelligence, a great sense of community self-awareness, foresight, and a commitment to helping others, which are essentially the fundamental building blocks, as I would see them, of servant leadership. So if it's, you're not going to have it if there's a narcissist at the top, and that doesn't display those qualities.
right. And I love the helping, I call it mentoring. One of my leadership guests mentioned, people ask him, "Hey, I'm a leader." He goes, "Okay, let me ask you who you're mentoring today." Well, nobody right now. Right now, you're not a leader, and that's okay. But a leader, like you said, Charles, is so well. You got to be mentoring, educating, helping, supporting those employees, not just being a narcissistic. Just go do it, get it done, and walk away.
Yeah, and if people are fed from that kind of environment, they're more apt to stay. Although in today's world, you do not have the sort of the, call it, commitment or desire to remain with one organization for a long period of time. There's more of a tendency to move around a fair bit.
Right. You mentioned Great Resignation, which I hear quiet quitting. My wife's a manager at Trader Joe's, and employees that come up, "Hey, I'm quiet quitting," and I'm 62, so it blows me away. I'm like, my dad would slap me silly if I came away, "I didn't work hard enough today." But again, different eras and all that. What's the strategy, and how do you help a company that's got a culture that starts to do the Great Resignation or the quiet quitting?
I think it's all about employee engagement and sort of the voltage level. By voltage level, I mean the energy level of the environment. Are people engaged in your organization? And what are you doing to reach out to them to get their engagement and commitment? Quiet quitting will occur in environments that allow for that, and it's where there's a sort of a massive gap between leadership and the employee base.
Right.
And where you say, "Hey, there's an old story about Casey Stengel, the legendary long time ago manager coach of the Yankees." He raced out of the dugout one day and slammed a glove to the ground and said, "Hell, can't anybody here play ball?" And to a certain extent, it can be like that in the corporate world, with employees saying, "Does anybody care? Do we matter?" And so I think if to fight the apathy, you really need a concentrated and deliberate effort at employee engagement, of keeping them into the fold. And where you don't have that, and people are allowed to kind of stray and wander, and it's probably even more, it is more challenging today than ever before because of the hybrid work environment as well.
Yeah, falls back to that. Yeah. So how would, so what I'm thinking is an outside influencer advisor like you would be a big help because you're in the middle of this. You think you have employee engagement, but you get this quiet quitting, this resignation. Where can somebody like you, an outside person, really focus that for the founder, CEO, president, whoever it may be?
Probably by doing a temperature check, by doing a good employee survey, and making sure that it's trusted and confidential, and so you can get enormous data from a good survey where employees will speak from the heart, if you will.
Yeah.
And so you take that feedback and hold it up to the light of day and say, okay, where are the issues? And let's start to tackle, if there are 12 issues, well, okay, let's take 3 for now, and 3 that are most critical. And are there any easy wins here as well? Let's not try and resolve Middle East peace or boil the ocean, but are there some quick wins in any of that? And then if there are, let's do the quick wins, but also what are the top 2 or 3 critical ones that we could work on for maximum impact? And let's get the employees involved in this with us to help bring this about. So it's you're engaging them. A lot of times the biggest complaint about employee surveys is, a survey is done. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate your input. We'll be back to you. And you never hear. Or they're out again just before the next survey with the results of the last one. And, so.
And that causes more problems.
It does. Don't do it if you're not going to act on it. It does more harm than good.
So so I'm thinking as you're talking, it's like, I'm a founder of a company. We're in an office building, and employees, all of them, right? The bathroom's always dirty. It's a simple thing,
correct?
But that's not solving war, like you said. But have the janitor come in twice a week instead of once a week, a little cost, but the impact to the employees bigger, right? That's kind of where you're going with this.
Yeah, that's a quick win.
Yeah, and then you work off the other wins. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
You work off the other wins as need be, but you're working on.
Correct.
So that leads to there's something on that list the company just can't do for whatever the reason. How is that handled?
Honesty. I realize that this is a particular issue. We can't go there right now because of, and this is the reason why. However, we can do 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. That it's so simple, but companies aren't doing that. Not all of them, but the companies are struggling. They're not coming down to the base level of things and working on, because everybody has problems. We're all fallible. We can't get away from that. Strategy. What's a successful definition of a successful strategy? I know there's a lot of variables, but from a simplistic form, what does that look like?
I guess it's in its simplest form. It's an approach that will consistently applied ensure success. In the simplest way.
I like that, because of course that's the goal of every company, business, or whoever is working.
Right.
Is whatever it's money, impact, whatever that why that Simon Sinek would say, or desire or passion, what that success looks like. Regards to, going back to prison, I know I mentioned before in the green room before, is there any great stories in those 3 years you worked as a parole officer that help you today, either in your business, personal life, that made a change in you?
Oh, I think probably a couple of things. One is that I've seen some people overcome massive disadvantages. Not always, but there are some who can. And that for those of us or you who have a fair advantage at birth and upbringing that was not marred by a whole host of issues that a lot of times plague inmates, drugs and alcoholism and marital disruptors and on and on and on and on. For those of you who were relatively spared that, you have a massive advantage in life. Now, all families are dysfunctional. I've never met one that was fully functional, but count your blessings. And when I lived in England for 4 years, and when I got back to the U.S., I started to I worked in a soup kitchen volunteering a couple of days a week, and every day that I was there, I would recognize the same faces. By and large, 98% were the same faces that showed up every day. And I would look out into those sea of faces. Some were mentally ill, but not all. Some were homeless, but not all. And a lot of them were just down on their luck. Some had work, some held jobs. But every day I would look out and I would say, there, but for the grace of God, but for a left turn there or a right turn here, that could have been me. And it could have been you. A wire goes differently, or you have an experience in life that sets you off the trail. So it's a tentative pathway.
Yeah, I've had a couple of guests that have been in prison and have had long talks with them. And, I grew up with, with everything I really needed. I was blessed.
Exactly. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And I don't know how that life is. And to listen to their stories and listen to you say that, people look at me kind of different, like, well, that helps me. They're like, what? I said, because I need to understand that area, because left or right, like you said, I could have been there and I may go there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There, but for the grace of God.
Amen. Last thing, we're running out of time here. Big elephant in the room with businesses is AI, technology, and all that. What's your thoughts on AI and strategy and all that?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. It's a technology on steroids. I'm a little afraid of, a potential outcome of AI, of kind of cannibalizing the universe, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think we should be looking at ways and means of controlling it, because, they now have, if they can capture 3 words from you, they will be able, the AI will imitate your voice perfectly, to such an extent that people who know you best, your spouse, your wife, would be fooled by a phone call.
That's
and
scary.
There's now with technology the ability to put characterizations of you in a room, halograms, and whereby I could envision someone calling your wife, calling your better half, and saying, I'm out of here, we're done.
Oh my God.
I'm leaving. Or whatever story. So AI has the potential to do great. It'll, if you have a speech to give tonight and you got to come up with it quickly, 30 seconds, you'll have it, or maybe 10. But it also has a massive potential downside. So I think internationally there has to be some thought given to how do we control this monster.
Yeah, it reminds me.
I don't think that's fear mongering on my part. I think
No. It's just being practical. That's how I feel, because I think it's got to come from your heart. Yeah, you do a speech, but you can't just take it verbatim from everything. Some things you can, and tweak it. And it just reminds me of the internet when the internet launched. It's great, we could do all this, but we got our, the black web, and we got our downsides of the internet, and we want to be careful with AI with that as well. It's so well said, Charles. I want to thank you for being on. We've run out of time. It's been great. I've
Really
learned more
enjoyed
about
it.
strategy than I've ever thought, which is great because I think it's important. And listeners, listen to Charles a couple times. Learn about how strategy in your life too can be better, and learn to enjoy life like he said. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you.